For those of you that are new, welcome. Thank you very much for joining. I was just talking to Brett that I'm hoping to have a new software very soon that helps with these webinars to make it easier to get logged on. And so thank you guys very much. Feel free when you do join. I've got this light here that's a pain in my butt today. When you guys do join, you're more than welcome to invite other people. We're looking to really help bridge the gap and share the content and the information. And so welcome to all of you that are here, and feel free to join. Thank you for those of you that shared. Hi, Tracy. It's great to see you. Sean, great to see you again. Sharon. We are, for those of you that aren't aware of who Globalist Hemp Association is, we are a membership-based group. Again, the goal is to connect all of you to the supply chain. We're $75 a month. It gives you access to all of our content, our notes, our memberships. We're doing a membership push right now. We have a software that we're getting ready to launch. And so just putting it out there, we are looking for new members. We're looking to drive our members right now to really drive our groups. Our software really helps us take this to the next level. It's really awesome. It creates community outreach. It gives them different channels to distribute content. It allows us to pull other associations and other groups into our portal to create this roadmap. So I'm really excited about that. Anything else? I'm trying to think of today, we're talking about all things blockchain. I'm really excited about having our guests on. I'm really excited to introduce Jeff. Jeff's been a huge value add within our organization and within the group, drumming up some incredibly bright conversation. And I have to give a shout out, Jeff, how many people have said, you're really lucky to be working with Jeff. He knows what he's doing. And so shout out that thank you very, very much for fooling them all. No, I'm just kidding.
Think it's going to make it.
No, you're awesome. So thank you very, very much for putting this together. I can't believe the amount of times or the number of times that the blockchain discussion has come up. It's pretty exciting. And how is it relevant within our industry? And I was actually really blown away in the last time we were talking about carbon credits, the number of people that have been pretty reserved about the industry coming together, or about really merging onto the blockchain platform. How many people said, you know, this is definitely an answer to a lot of the problems within the industry. And so I'm excited to have Brett and Jeff and Linda and Trey break that down for us. We have just a couple more minutes. Jeff, if you want to give a little bit of an intro, maybe to what the structure of this is, and then we can take it from there. Does that work?
Sure. I'm actually having difficulties. I think we've all been having little technical difficulties today. My computer crashed. I'm on a new computer, so I'm trying to send Brett the file. A lot going on. But
that's all right.
The main thing is just looking at emerging technology and kind of how it plays into supply chain and the whole ecosystem, from the soil to the landfill and everything in between. So we have some great speakers here: Trey from Dragonchain, Brett from Multichain Ventures, and then Linda with DMF Data Corp. Is that right, Linda? Yes.
Yes.
So if hopefully we can get Mandi to do the PDF version of the presentation and just kind of go step by step and go from there.
Yeah, we want to do that. We want to do intros first, or is that?
Yes, yeah, let's go through intros.
Okay, perfect. Jeff, you want to start? Tell me a little bit about yourself.
I'm Jeff Conley. I'm from Melbourne Beach, Florida, just kind of surfer skater kid. Grew up in the kind of poker world. I actually left college to play poker professionally, and kind of found out about Bitcoin in 2010. From that, we're doing a lot of transactions, and Bitcoin and blockchain was like the new big thing. We're like, holy crap. So we all embraced it. I got offered a job by Apollo as kind of like a researcher base. Like, let's look at the underlying technology and blockchain, kind of agnostic of cryptocurrency, but like the underlying technology that makes everything run, and do a kind of a blockchain solutions company. So I've been doing that for 3.5 years now, consulted for many, many businesses and various industries, and learned a lot along the way, made a lot of great connections along the way.
My name is Trey Rutledge. I'm the Director of Sales and Business Development for Dragonchain. I've been with them a little over 3 years. I'm from Kansas City. I was a registered caregiver, commercialized licensed grower for 10 years in Colorado. So I have a little bit of experience with cannabis and hemp. I have been working on several projects in the space with tracking supply chain, seed to sale, carbon footprint, a lot of really innovative things using NFTs and smart contracts and decentralized identity. And just love seeing the space migrate on chain.
Is it my turn?
Perfect.
So my name is Brett Puffenbarger. I am the Vice President of Corporate Initiatives for a company called Multichain Ventures. The short answer for us is we're right at the intersection of specifically cannabis and blockchain right now, but expanding into the hemp world. Our big claim to fame is Assembly Bill 466, a closed-loop tokenized financial ecosystem for tax remittance and business-to-business transactions in Nevada, specifically with hopes to expand that. I'm a weed guy first and foremost, that just so happens to be trying to figure out where the blockchain piece fits into this, which I think we'll get into with the slides in a little bit. So I'll leave it at that.
Hey, I'm Linda Goetze, and I'm not a poker gal. I'm not a weed guy, but very, very happy to be here today and have been connected with blockchain since 2012. Have family that's been really positively impacted through products from hemp and CBDC. I have, you're going to probably see this when I say acronyms going forward, but I have dyslexia, and I've never smoked pot or done anything with weed, but I've been told, you know, it can help loosen your brain up. I'm not quite sure how all that works, but I have been just engaged, I guess I would say, since 2012, and Bitcoin was my starting point. But it's been 2017, 2018, just really focused on seeing the ecosystem grow, seeing enterprise engagement, having it go beyond just Bitcoin in a way that has really highlighted where the verticals that are going to be impacted are. And in 2017, I had a chance to connect with the Blockchain Chamber of Commerce and worked with an amazing group of people there that have continued to expand the chamber. I led the chamber for a number of years and am currently focused with DFM Data Core, trying to help support supply chain innovation. And that's in part why I'm here. The supply chain has been, in my opinion, severely hampered in the hemp industry, and I'm looking forward to helping support that change. And I very strongly believe that blockchain can be a part of that, and there's some emerging technology that I think we can collaborate together on to really bring positive change and help create adoption in a way that takes a step away from all of the negative that has surrounded the industry in the past, and really help bring forward the huge benefits that the plant has. So looking forward to this conversation, and thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. So Jeff, do you want me to go ahead and start the presentation, try to share it, or Brett, are you sharing it? What works best?
Yeah, if you share it, I'm having technical difficulty. Sorry about that.
No big deal.
Is my internet connection okay?
I think you're good. Can everybody see this emerging technologies? Jeff, are you good? Trey or Brett, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Got you.
I think Jeff might be having a problem. Brett, do you want to start?
Yeah, so I was not prepared for that, but I'm gonna wing it. So I think the easy thing to do right now is to kind of start with understanding what a blockchain is and what a blockchain isn't, because I think there's a lot of it's very easy to kind of assume that the average person who hears the term and isn't familiar with the industry immediately thinks Bitcoin, Dogecoin, you know, Elon Musk and chaos of that sort, and that's just not the case. Go ahead to the next slide and let's see what he's got there. So what is blockchain? Blockchain is a platform technology that has a broad range of applications across many vertical markets and is capable to transform a multitude of business processes. So in short, blockchain is a way to store information in a secure format called cryptography. And through that, you get a bunch of emerging technologies that break off of that. So for me, I like to use the terminology that blockchain is a foundational technology, something similar to the internet, right? So the internet allows for transformational technologies to break off of that, something like e-commerce, email, social media, you name it. And for us, what we're going to kind of look at today is, what is a blockchain? What are the different transformational technologies that have offshot from that? And then kind of try to marry those up to some of the issues or the problems that face the hemp or cannabis industries at large. So blockchain's not that new. I think a lot of people are, kind of started in the world of Bitcoin in 2020 something, or 2015, 14, 13, 12, whatever. Truth be told, it was kind of adopted a little bit earlier. It's actually a foundational technology. So the goal originally was to build a currency, Bitcoin, and they kind of went back and looked at it and went, man, what is this? So let's kind of get into what is a blockchain? Well, blockchain is a technology consisting of connected sets of encrypted data that can sequentially validate the integrity of the previous blocks of data. So the way I use it, or the way I explain it to a lot of people, is think about it like a Lego brick. If you took a chunk of information and that was the body of the brick, and then you're going to connect it with the little nub at the top and the little hole in the bottom, those are things that are often called hashes, right? So blockchains can exist in both public and private versions. And depending on those is going to be really dependent on how you're going to use the functionality for it. And I think it would be best if Linda kind of went off of this one, since this is her quote and the stuff like that.
Thanks for throwing it at me like that.
Got you. We're winging it.
Yeah, no.
You guys are awesome,
Yeah,
because this is, I don't know where Jeff went. I saw him maybe log in earlier, but I think he's really having problems with sound. So thank you everybody for being patient. You've got it, Linda.
No problem. When we're looking at blockchain, there's a lot of people that just, like you said, go to Bitcoin. But what we've seen more and more is that there are enterprise grade implementations that don't have the Bitcoin model, that don't have the public, fully distributed and decentralized ledger. And that's what many people will probably be seeing implemented in the hemp industry, is a more private permission blockchain. And so as we look at the definition of blockchain, one of my pet peeves is that people say the blockchain. And if you ever hear someone say the blockchain and they haven't already defined that it's the Bitcoin blockchain or the Ethereum blockchain or, the Dragonchain block, I mean, you need to have specificity, because each individual blockchain has absolutely massive differences in how it does its job and the proof under which it functions. So the Bitcoin blockchain has proof of work. You have a lot of frustration because of the energy draw that creates. There's a bunch of machines around the world that are doing complex problems, and the first one that solves actually gets to be the one that gets the block reward. And so there's a bit of a pain point there. There's some latency issues when you look at the Ethereum blockchain. So each different blockchain has its benefits and its drawbacks, and you just have to be careful as you learn about them that you're actually getting to know which blockchain you're dealing with. There is no the blockchain. So I guess that's probably the most valuable add-in I can give you today, is be aware of the differences and know that there are hundreds of valid blockchains that can be used. And I'm going to throw Trey into this, since I kind of got tossed into the presentation, because he's working with a company, Dragonchain, that actually has when you look at blockchain interoperability, the patents for one-to-many and many-to-one. And that's what we're seeing is going to be more and more what's going to happen, is it's not just going to be any one blockchain that's being put to work. It's going to be multiple blockchains that are being used for what they're best at. And that interoperability between them, that's going to be huge. So Trey, I don't know if we're following the little slides. It's kind of hard to read them on my screen, but I figured this might be a good time for you to give a little insight there.
Sure. I agree with you that especially when you look at complex things like bringing together complexity science or having multiple networks that need to have interdepartmental or inter blockchain communication, I think, I definitely agree with you that we're seeing a lot more of the realization that it's not going to be one blockchain. It's going to be a lot of people do a lot of different things well. You want to use different features from different networks, and they all need to be able to communicate together. So I do think the interchain patent will play a larger role, but patents aside, just looking at the growth and the evolution, I think that you're going to have a lot of interconnectivity that's going to need to happen to make things function.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Jeff's back. Wonderful. He can talk about this fun roadmap to blockchain, because it's been over 50 years we've been headed in this direction. It's not this brand new thing that we're working with.
All right, is your sound back, Jeff? Can you hear us?
I am back, I believe. Can you hear me good?
Yes.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Excellent.
Yeah.
That was pretty good. That was a good transition, you guys. Good save, Brett. Good job.
Thank you so much, guys. So yeah, this slide took me actually a kind of embarrassing amount of time to put together. This is a lot of research went into the slide, and I had to leave a lot of different kind of key points out. There's a lot more that could fit into this kind of one slide. It still looks cluttered, but it's been a long time from the original internet in the 60s to come to the P2P stage at the Napster era. That's a long time, a lot of development, a lot of unknowns, and right now blockchain is kind of in that infancy stage where people really don't know what it's capable of yet, but it is the next big thing. I guess I was going to glaze over kind of, if anyone wants me to send this document to them, I will gladly just drop your email and I'll send the document. I don't want to get too heavy into the technical, different algorithms and everything else like that. I want to do a kind of basic blockchain. So if you can skip to slide 7, we'll just kind of,
Jeff,
slide 6.
I'm just gonna
slide 6.
Yeah, Jeff, I'm just gonna say, I love that you called blockchain the next big thing, because that's one of the things that we've been looking at, is that the emerging tech stacks are going to just be treating blockchain as a thing that can be acted upon, right? So this is the continuing evolution, when we can just use any blockchain as a thing that can be taken advantage of for its strengths. I think that's really going to maximize the opportunity that we have with the tech.
Right. Can you go to one slide back, Mandi? It's slide 6.
Are you seeing that? Or this one?
There. So this is a slide. This is actually Brett's kind of brainstorming slide. Brett, do you want to go over the slide?
You're on mute, friend.
So for sure, maybe we should get into a little bit about why this matters before we get into what it is. So I'm looking at this slide kind of similar to, on the right, what you're going to see is survey says Family Feud style list of things that the cannabis or hemp industry needs, right? So we're not getting away from track and trace. We're not getting away from inventory management. We're currently not going to get away from needing some level of middlemen or transactional information going between different buyers and sellers in the industry. We're not going to get away from needing artwork and other certificates of authenticity and things that you're going to normally use to stake your ownership claims in something. And we're not going to get away from the banking problems that a lot of people are experiencing, even in the hemp and CBD space, but even though it's federally legal. So what I've kind of done here is made a very simple, kind of like the thing you got from kindergarten, where you draw a line from the survey says problem to one of these transformational technologies I mentioned at the beginning. So the sort of core piece to any blockchain is a decentralized ledger of some sort, right? So it's a store of information that is immutable, that is not capable of being changed in any way, shape, or form by anyone without notifying everybody, essentially, that it happens. And that's probably the easiest thing to draw an obvious and blatant parallel to. That's going to take over the track and trace and inventory management sides of the industry. I think both of these things are incredibly important. And I think that, let's just call it like it is, blockchain does that better than the existing technology. Full stop, no ifs, ands, or buts. that's how it is. Something else that's worth touching on is smart contracts. So the idea of a smart contract in very, very, very basic terms, and I'm sure one of my fellow speakers could break this down a lot better in a little bit, but the idea of a smart contract is that all of those things that we normally associate with middlemen, brokers, underwriters, escrow accounts, all of these sort of things, they don't really need to exist in a world with smart contracts, because now that interaction is controlled by a computer program, more or less. So when I look at smart contracts, I look at it as an immediate fix for the current broker joker network that we all know exists in the hemp space, regardless of where you're at, regardless of which type of product or offering you're putting out there. Another one that you probably hear pretty often are NFTs, or non-fungible tokens. And I think there's a heavy focus right now. Everybody see them in the news. Oh, digital art, you can sell your art online. And yes, that's a way to do it. That's a use of a non-fungible token. But really what a non-fungible token is a certificate of authenticity that's included in the blockchain. So it's something that you can prove your ownership stake, or you can prove the transfer of that ownership stake of anything. And something that I have envisioned is something as simple as certificates of analysis that we're all used to using in the hemp space immediately become an NFT. Now you can send that to them. You can prove that you own it. You can prove that it's matched up on the blockchain, particularly, or on a blockchain, particularly if we're using it using a track and trace system and an inventory management system that also communicates. Now there is no question. It's removing the error there. And then of course you have everybody's favorite blockchain transformational technology, and that's cryptocurrency, because that's the one everybody remembers or knows. Cryptocurrencies can be all kinds of things. You could get into something really complex and emerging, like a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization, where you can tokenize your business and sell it out, sort of like a share on the stock market, but a little different, because instead of being ownership stake, it's controlling stake. They could also be used for instantaneous validation of transactions. So there is no more, hey man, I need to see your proof of funds. Nah, they couldn't order it until the proof of funds was there. You can track it on whatever given blockchain you're using, and you can use a token or a cryptocurrency to replace it. If you're in the cannabis space, the regulated side of the market, in certain uses, yeah, I did say tokenize. You got me. If you're using it in the more regulated markets for the cannabis side, it can provide an alternative means of paying for things, kind of like we talked about when I mentioned Assembly Bill 466. It allows them to stop being so cash heavy, stop being these very burdensome and dangerous things, where you can just transfer it into a currency that you guys can trade back and forth. And I think that's probably about it for the current transformational technologies that really apply directly. But I will say that, like Jeff hinted at, this is going to be the next big thing. And just like the internet didn't get to e-commerce and social media immediately, we're going to see more and more emerging and transformational technologies break off of the blockchain technology. And I think this, to me, sets a pretty good precedent that the hemp and cannabis world needs these sort of technologies, probably more than most industries, because let's call it like it is. We have a lot of shadiness going down, and this is about as transparent and anti-shady as you can get if done right.
Should we go to the next slide, Jeff?
Next.
Next slide. Nice job. I don't know how to change to presenter view. I don't know how to make this a different view. If anybody else does, I'm open to sharing. Up in the corner, I see someone pointing. Like, I'm in share mode, but the presentation itself is a PDF, and I don't know how to share that otherwise.
Yeah, I don't think PDFs have presentation mode.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
All right, well, let's just kind of speed through this a little bit. So this is just like the basic block hash function. So it's just the Genesis block is the first block where all the information is kind of set. And then every block after that has the value of the previous block. It's pretty basic. Can you skip to slide 9?
Yep.
So this is the best, like, kind of one-page snapshot I've seen comparing the different networks. So there's a centralized network, a decentralized network, distributed network, and then a hybrid of all of those down at the bottom right, where I'm looking at the hybrid side of it, where we can have kind of centralized side chains that still can interoperate with other networks. So it's like the Dragonchains can operate with the Multichain Ventures and Global Hemp Association. So we can have all these kind of semi-centralized entities that are all interconnected and kind of choose whether it's going to be distributed or just simply decentralized. So it's essentially a consortium where it's like multiple entities all working together on the same ecosystem. So that's where the supply chain, that we're tracking everything from the soil to the landfill and everything in between. That's where like every single system has to interoperate, from the mining, processing, to the logistics and shipping and transportation, to manufacturing and distribution, and to then the final supply chain, and even into the hands of the consumer. Like once the consumer touches a product, let's say the energy consumption of a dryer or a washing machine during its lifetime, that's called Scope 3 greenhouse gas emissions, where it's like it's no companies directly contributing to it, but they've provided the product that does, like a car's vehicle emissions during its lifetime. Like nobody's reporting on this. That's Scope 3 is not required to report. So I guess that takes us into the next slide, slide 10. And this is kind of my little fun way. I'm trying to work this in a way where I have a 6-year-old and an 8-year-old. So I bounce my ideas off my kids. And essentially, if they pass the kid test, like my kids get it, then I know that I'm doing an okay job to present it to people that just may not have any kind of understanding. So this is kind of how I break down the kind of greenhouse gas emissions, where it starts at the mine, at the earth, and kind of every single point along the way, whenever it's shipped in a truck or an airplane or a ship or anything else, it's docking kind of a CO2 debit. That so if we track it literally completely from the source all the way up, products have a lot higher carbon footprint than is really disclosed, because they're only accounting for their Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions, which is essentially their fuel bill and their energy bill. But once it hits the supply chain, Scope 3 emissions, that's 90% of all the other emissions that are not, no one has to report on this. So that's where I'm looking at bringing this to the consumer level, where consumers can start tracking their own emissions, not just point fingers at the industry that are meeting their demand. And this next slide is kind of my vision of how the cannabis industry supply chain works, or will work, where it's like from the source, from all the way down to the genetics and the breeders getting approved cultivars, to like every single step along the line. And I know if you notice in the box down at the bottom, everything's all in one box. So I have medical, recreational, the labs, the nurseries and greenhouses, the industrial crops, the regenerative crops. So that's all one plant, kind of one system. This is a regulated market. They're all under regulation. So that's the perfect platform to start all this kind of technology research, where cannabis is 80 years behind other crops in terms of funded research and kind of methodology development, where it's a kind of nice starting point. So a new entity, a new kind of business model to start from the ground up and kind of set a standard for the rest of the world to follow. And that moves into, this is my kind of circular supply chain. This is not my original idea. There's other people doing this, where it's like there's a company called WasteCoin that you can download an app and you can scan in and scan out your recyclables and kind of get a credit for it. So that's kind of my circular supply chain, where it's like when you're buying a product, you're not just buying the product, you're also purchasing or taking ownership of the packaging it comes in. So I'm looking at the potential for some kind of embedded labeling, smart labeling. So when you purchase an item, it kind of gets attached to you. And then once you go to dispose of that item, you have these different options. Either you throw it on the ground, you'll kind of owe on that product until you dispose of it in a waste bin. And so it's like landfill's one option. If it goes to recycle, you get a credit. If it goes to compost, you get a credit. There's kind of this monetization of the supply chain, where kind of helps stop pollution, track where our plastics and other waste are going. Just again, from soil to landfill, just everything in between. And this slide is definitely a slide you're going to need a full screen to kind of pick it apart. This is kind of my trying to get it in one shot from how it all works, from LTE communication, satellite, all these different communication networks, because internet connectivity in rural areas is one of the big problems. I think it's a pretty big percentage of rural farms that don't have any internet connection. So if we're going to talking about precision agriculture and smart sensors and everything else driving it, we're also going to have to look at the networks. And I don't like relying on the satellite networks for certain issues. So I like a kind of redundant ground-based platform, which there's a couple of companies I've been following for a long time, like Helium and Foam. They do like this kind of like network of nodes, and Foam does geolocation off of these nodes. So it's all just like really from everything from employee health tracking, equipment and machinery, crop management input data, just like literally everything on the farm is tracked and monitored in real time, uploading data from your private cloud on the farm to a public cloud that can then be processed using AI. The data can then be sent back to the farmer, which is monetized in the form of increased yields and increased profits. Again, I'll send this slide out to anybody that's interested if you can have a little deeper look. And this is kind of like where one of the big mascots of kind of where I'm looking at is kind of transitioning to regenerative agriculture is bees. That's kind of like our mascot. Like in a recent survey, 82% of Americans agree that humans are causing bee deaths and that we should solve the problem. So it's if we can get 82% of the Americans agreeing on one topic, we should probably stand behind that. And I'm looking at bees as kind of our little mascot. Like we pitch these regenerative ideas at people and it's like, oh, you don't care about the bees? So I'm looking at real-time tracking bees. Bees have had a really hard run. Like 2019, there was like a 40% population death in bees. And then 2020, there was another significant drop, and it's all from different mites that cause viruses, inject viruses to the larvae. So if we can track bees in real time and kind of even increase bee colony populations, like have a setup for like a lawns to garden setup, and you get a bee box on your property and you track your kind of soil carbon readings in your own lawn, your bee activity in your own lawn, and try to get some kind of carbon credit on that. And that goes to lawns to gardens, community composting, all these different initiatives where it's landfill waste diversion, where if we can quantify the carbon, we can put a credit on it. And blockchain and decentralization is the way to do it, where I'm looking at the current carbon credit schema or the status quo. And it's a very centralized, packed with middlemen environment where it's not beneficial for the farmer. It's beneficial for the people lacing their pockets on kind of the farmer's backs in a way. So I'm looking at doing this where it's decentralized, where the people kind of control the different carbon credits. And I like to call them environmental credits because we're not just talking about carbon, we're talking about many other things. This is just another quick little snapshot, like the kind of goals of this project: transparency, traceability, immutability, sustainability, connectivity, decentralization, standardization, consensus, third-party verification, and then finally adoption. Like mass adoption is one of the biggest problems with blockchain. And anybody on this call that's working on a blockchain company, they can tell you how hard it is to kind of get adoption, where it's like you get a lot more no's than you get yes when you're consulting in the blockchain world. And it's just not a good fit for some companies. Some companies have some other technological issues they need to sort out before they even look at putting money into blockchain. And this is kind of just to sum it up again. You can just look at these slides. I'd like to open this back up to some questions, or if any of the panelists have anything to add, they want to add to that.
Can I ask a question? Hey, first off, Jeff, great presentation. This is a very systemic approach to this industry, which I think is pretty important. I love that you started off talking about genetics from the distributors, because the farmers have no control over the genetic expression of their plants, right? And on top of that, I mean, you're talking about biostatistics, bioinformatics, and mapping all in one. And I see on your image, you're using different kinds of spectroscopy from drones, right? So you're creating smart maps on farms?
Yeah, like essentially layering GPS and GIS but without, like, GIS is typically a satellite. So I'm looking at a ground-based redundancy GIS.
Yeah. I taught myself GIS this summer, so I think it's like the coolest thing in the world. Awesome. Thanks, Jeff. I don't know if that was a question. I just really liked your presentation. Thank you.
Appreciate it, man.
I would love to
Yeah,
hear
that's
from
awesome.
you,
I
Trey.
was
Linda, go ahead.
I just want to jump in about helium really quickly because I had a fun opportunity when I was with the Blockchain Chamber in Atlanta to be doing a debate and speech competition around blockchain technology. And one of the young men, he was actually a 6th grader, is one of the biggest helium owners in the world. And he got involved as a young man and has been participating in getting these, kind of localized hotspots connected. And this is such an innovative space, and it's amazing who is seeing the opportunity and acting on it. And so just wanted to give a shout out to Helium because it was fun to, just see a young man sitting there in front of me and have him start talking about, the last year that he'd been, working with these little hotspots and, getting his cryptocurrency. And it's creating a service, and it's doing it from the ground up. And I think that has a really strong connection with cannabis and the hemp industry. And the other side of it is, getting organizations like Threefold that are reimagining the cost structure for compute and storage. If we bring those costs down, we're going to open up the doors for farmers around the world to be able to have that connectivity. And so, yeah, it's a big part of raising awareness. And that's why, working with the chamber, I was so passionate about it, because it's like people need to know what's possible, what's available, be encouraged to engage with it. And, Trey is one of those guys that he's a consummate educator. He loves to, take what he's absorbed and learned and help others understand it in a way that's really straightforward. And so back to you, Trey, but just wanted to pop in about Helium and Threefold, because it is such a necessary thing to have that edge compute, have a lower cost profile and
No, it's very important. I love what Threefold is doing in the space, and we've partnered with them and working on several things with them. So love to see them dropping the cost there. But I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the things that we're doing in the space. Some of the projects that I'm working on, I can't talk about, but I can definitely share some of the things that I think are the more innovative ways that we're doing the seed to sale tracking, and then also incorporating the carbon footprint tracking at the same time. But one thing I think is really important when you're looking at this is that it's not just blockchain by itself that I think is really the most powerful piece. It's when you're bringing in, the NFT, the smart contracts, and then the big piece for us is the decentralized identity, where we're actually able to, take data from an IoT and a sensor and device authentication as well as human, and then go ahead and embedding that NFT with the payment itself. So as that final transaction is triggered, you'd actually have payment settlement. So I think that is a huge piece. But back to Linda's point earlier, I think it's really important when looking at the blockchain, when you're picking a blockchain. I think there's a lot of things that have kept a lot of companies from onboarding in the past. You look at big things like security, network security, network speed, network scalability. Then you've got interoperability, and then you've got time to market. So as you're looking at a blockchain, make sure that you're looking at one that's addressed all of those issues, because they are huge hurdles. And if you start down the wrong path with the wrong project, you can waste a lot of time and a lot of money really quickly. So make sure as you're weighing, because there are a ton of blockchains out there. And to the point earlier, the hybrid is where I think you're going to see a lot of the enterprise adoption, and especially when you're looking at the hemp and the cannabis space. You're not going to be able to put all data out there. So having a private hybrid chain that can push things out when need be in a permission basis is really an important feature to look for.
Great
Do we
feedback.
have do we have anyone from Smart Axiom on? I would like Smart Axiom to kind of touch on what they're doing in the edge IoT space. Is anyone on? Can you raise your hand if you're from Smart Axiom?
Hi, it's Trent.
What's up?
It's all good, man. So I've been listening and enjoying the conversation so far. And so you touched on some really interesting things. I think there's this great fit between blockchains and provenance in logistics, right? So provenance is all about where has a shipment been, at what point in time, under what conditions, and owned by whom. And blockchains, their immutable record, are perfect for storing that. The problem that some of our customers have found is that, so you have this perfect record, but it suffers from this garbage in, garbage out problem, right? So if you put bad data in the system, there's no value in permanently storing bad data. And so at Smart Axiom, what we've been focusing on is the security of the devices that report the data to you. And really raising the trust in their identity and that the data has not been tampered with. And so we're actually using blockchain security techniques like proof of stake right out to the tracking device that goes on a truck or on a shipment. And that's the value we bring. And it's quite complementary to the big enterprise blockchain backends. And we're all compatible with those.
Awesome. Jeff?
Thanks for that, Trent. So I guess, Mandi, you think it's time to open it up to Q&A? Do you have any questions that you'd like to highlight? I have not looked at the chat. I'm on my phone, so I didn't want to scroll around.
There are a lot of questions that are coming in, and I know, Brett, you've been able to answer some. I'll turn it over to you here in just a second. But of course, about the tracking of carbon, right? The carbon and the track and trace involved there. Can we speak to that specifically?
Yeah, so that's more of a theory base, because right now the status quo is essentially soil core samples, boots in the ground, taking the samples, then you take it from multiple points in the field, send it to a lab for analysis, then kind of get an average and apply it math to the field to get a number. It's not really very accurate. You don't know if the soil you plunge here has got more carbon than soil 2 feet over. So I'm looking at kind of using math. If we can just use simple math to track inputs and outputs from fuel and energy usage, like literally tracking everything, every component, every part of it from soil on, like everything, every machinery that works, your employees' gas driving or fuel emissions driving to work. So if we can kind of quantify all of that and get kind of like a ledger, like a positive and negative balance on carbon, and then we can get soil sensors, multiple sensors, as many sensors as you can. I'm even looking at there's some robots out that are doing some weeding stuff. So I'm looking at if they can do, like there's a rover on Mars right now that's taking soil core samples from millions of miles away. I think we can figure it out right here on Earth, and just get bots in the field, constantly collecting data, transmitting that data through networks to the cloud and other kind of AI processing devices. Just come up with some simple math, like these kind of different variables equate to this much carbon. So then if we apply that everywhere else, we can kind of have a baseline and quantify the carbon essentially in real time is what I'm trying to do, where everyone's tracking on their own cell phones via the app. You can track every activity you do, and the people who kind of reduce their footprints can kind of collect a credit, and the people who kind of emit more greenhouse gases, like the big industries and other things like that, we kind of have to pay into it. It's like, I hate to say carbon tax, but that's kind of where they're going. I just don't like that word. So it's like a different way of looking at it, where it's like an ebb and flow on carbon value.
Awesome, Brett.
Yeah, going back to
go ahead, Linda.
yeah, going back to, thank you. Going back to one of the slides that you have, where you said that it's about 90% of the actual carbon footprint might come after it's out of the farmer's hands and into the supply chain, right? That's something that the DFM data has been working on to help create a beginning touch point where there's a unique load identifier that then follows that shipment the entire time. And we can actually, in the dynamic freight matching space, be able to prove that there was the most efficient driver tractor trailer load combination made that saved those long miles of empty trucks on the road, right? You actually, connected with a greater infrastructure that gave you somebody that was, 2 miles away versus 25. And, you made not the economic choice sometimes, but the ecologically responsible choice to pick that closest truck, right? That closest, it actually is one of the biggest ways that we can reduce carbon is to get the trucks that are empty off of the road and make those efficient matches. So it really is important. And having the ability to take that initial load and give it a unique identifier, we can prove what loads are real, right? There's people that splossed, 50 loads out there. They only have 5, but they put it out there and then it gets multiplied onto 10 more load boards. And now it looks like there's 50 loads and the price of the load being transported goes up because it looks like there's more demand. And there's so many inefficiencies in the current system. And, bringing in a blockchain based infrastructure that allows for visibility and transparency is a really key aspect of that carbon bin footprint being able to be truly validated. Like you could have gone with someone 50 miles away, you went with someone 2 miles, you get that credit for the 48 miles that weren't run empty that could have been. So there's a lot of ways to address and I love saying, hey, we can look at what type of plants are being grown and, how much they're pulling, carbon out of the atmosphere, and I'd love to have someone speak to the products that actually trap carbon as well, because I know there's some insulation and some different hemp products that do that. How do we get credit to the growers and the producers of that to make it more incentivized, right? That we're using that type of insulation rather than the traditional non-carbon trapping insulation. So.
What I find, hey, Linda, what I find is interesting is in the process of growing hemp or cannabis, let's say, growers actually use canisters of CO2 in the greenhouses to increase the growing process. So it seems to me that those growers themselves could if you're generating any CO2, you could almost use it immediately to grow plants in greenhouses. And the greenhouse where you're growing something could get carbon credits in this very tight-knit, cycle. I mean, why do you need to buy CO2 in a tank if somebody else over here is getting a carbon credit for trucking CO2 across the country to inject into concrete? So that's
what my business model focuses on, is containing all the CO2 and recycling it inside of the same system. It's a very efficient model.
That's great. Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Brett, I'd love your feedback on some of this too. I've been seeing you're engaged in a lot of the questions and conversations going on. Do you have any feedback or anything you'd like to add as well? And then Trey.
Yeah, so let me hit a couple of these questions I've seen kind of floating down the question list real quick. So in theory, and this will answer several questions, a blockchain, and specifically a blockchain built to be a decentralized ledger, or really any sort of ledger technology, could replace any level of data provenance you could want, whether that's government tracking, whether that's internal tracking, whether that's peer-to-peer tracking, business-to-business tracking. The whole point of a blockchain in general, or most of them overall, is so that data is securely stored and easily found through a line. So the whole chain part of blockchain is that you link blocks of data or chunks of data together in a very easily found and used way. And then I saw a question specifically about cryptocurrencies and their valuations and complexity. let's just cut straight to the chase on that one. Right now, a vast majority of cryptocurrencies are totally bogus. They are just kind of schemes to play off of the hype and the other things, which I think anybody in the hemp or cannabis space is well aware that's any emerging market that happens. So the easy way to think about this, and I tried to answer it in the written format, is any currency, it doesn't matter if it's a cryptocurrency or a fiat currency, at its core is meant to represent a given amount of goods, services, labor, etc. So value, right? You hear in political terms, you hear the means of production. So currency is meant to represent a level of that. A cryptocurrency is an alternative to a fiat currency. And this is a little bit political, but currently we're experiencing in the United States a massive amount of inflation. And it seems to be that the Federal Reserve's answer is consistently to just print more money. So what that ends up happening is, if let's use some basic numbers, if I have $100 quote unquote worth of value and 100 whatever currency, they're worth 1 to 1. If I print more, it's going to be worth less. So if I print 200 of whatever given currency and it's still $100 quote unquote of transactions, that's going to be worth 50 cents a piece. If I have half of that, if I have 50 of them rather than 100 of them, they're going to be worth quote unquote $2 a piece. So when you're looking at the different cryptocurrencies, currently the easiest way to valuate them is the US dollar, because that's what most of us use and function in. But eventually you'll start seeing, I think, more adoption of a standardized valuation that is not a fiat currency. And it could actually be the other way around, meaning, okay, $50,000 is 1 Bitcoin rather than 1 Bitcoin is $50,000. I know that's not the accurate number. I'm just using as an example. So when you're talking about implementing this into your business, you can choose to intake any of the currencies you want. And there is a slight risk there for you to understand that that currency could go up or down. That currency could go up or down, not because it has variable inflation situations like the current fiat currencies do, but more because we're kind of at that tipping point of adoption where more and more people are using it. So more and more transactions are being done in a given cryptocurrency, meaning that the value of the currency itself is going to rise. So in the original one where I had 100 and 100, well, imagine if it was 10,000 uses or $10,000 worth of goods, services, labor, and other things, and still 100. Well, each of those is going to be worth, what is that, 1,000, 100? I'm terrible at math on the fly, but you guys get where I'm going with that. It greatly changes the valuation. So currently there is, I don't know, hundreds of cryptocurrencies. Each one of them has a purpose and a value. All of them are linked to a specific blockchain. Each of these specific blockchains has a purpose. Some of them are specifically to be a currency or to generate currency. Some of them do other things, process validations. Some of them even link blockchains to each other or do other specific mechanisms, like allow for smart contracts or allow for tracking and tracing or these other things. So when you're looking at that, for you as a business operator that's considering it, in my opinion, and this is not an expert opinion, this is just a personal opinion, the more different variations that you could potentially see taking in only increases the buying power of your potential consumer. And that is not to say that you have to hold all of them. You can always cash them out for cash later, but it allows people to use alternative payment methods to purchase your products. And I mean, there's plenty of companies that do it. We could probably do it in a pretty short order, but you could just put an API and a pay with Bitcoin button or a pay with a given cryptocurrency button. And it can be something as simple as that. I think that's the only two major questions I haven't gotten to fully answer in a text format.
A couple other things I'd like to add really quick too is looking at, let's just say Ethereum. Okay, a couple of years ago, they had the CryptoKitties app come out, right? So, you know, you want to make sure that whatever blockchain you use has stable, deterministic, and predictive pricing that doesn't vary based on network activity. Because as a business, you know, when you start looking at $80 fees, if you can get on, it's cost prohibitive for a business. And then the second thing is just the underlying, we're talking about carbon, we're talking about, you know, ledgers and tracking and blockchain. And then you look at Bitcoin, has gotten a bad rap lately for the amount of energy that it uses. So I think also we should at least look at, the amount of watts per transaction that whatever blockchain you use consumes, because that, it's going to be more and more of the focus is what I'm hearing coming out of the Biden administration is that they are going to continue to track and penalize or tax, for lack of a better word, your footprint. So having a low carbon footprint, with your tracking system is really important. But those two things I just wanted to kind of to broach, because you don't want to have a blockchain where all of a sudden your fees are 1,000 times higher than they were the month before. That's unsustainable for business, obviously.
Yeah, fortunately, the Bitcoin blockchain has gotten the Lightning network set up, and I got to eat the last slice of the pizza that was the first pizza bought with the Lightning network. So that's been a couple of years, a little over 2 years, in the TAB event in Atlanta, Georgia. But we have layer 2 and layer 3 protocols that are being put into place to help mitigate the underlying pain points of some of the more stable public blockchains. So that ability to work with them, provide services is a great, actually out of Atlanta, Georgia as well, a great company that has been working most specifically on the Ethereum blockchain, but on many blockchains to help support that the solutioning for the pain points of what I would call the more traditional blockchains. But it's a work in progress, right? We have implementation, and then the implementation highlights where the pain points are, and then we have innovation to solve for those. And so this is part of the adoption cycle, and I believe we really are not just in a hype cycle now with blockchain implementation. We're really in an adoption cycle that has gotten a lot of enterprise buy-in, over 50%. Well, I wish I had the specific number, but just about every financial institution is now acknowledging their either use or experimentation with blockchain technology. So it's definitely something that getting comfortable with and researching, checking out, understanding better, just playing with, what a wallet is, how to manage a private key, recognizing that if you don't have your keys, and you don't hold them, then you still have a third party that could cause you, possibly unintentional harm, but cause you harm. So there's learning points that definitely need to be had. If you're totally a newbie, I would recommend connecting with organizations like the Blockchain Chamber of Commerce, startups that are bringing blockchain solutions forward, that want to get visibility, be seen, be heard, get validation from people who've been in the ecosystem for a long time. Great resource, great place to connect. And this is a learning time frame for everybody. So don't be afraid to ask questions. And thank you for everybody that put their questions in today. It was fun to see those. And Mandi, it's brilliant on you for recognizing the impact zone that blockchain is going to have in the hemp industry. So thank you.
I thank all the brilliant minds around me, like yourself. Thank you very much for joining. Jeff, go ahead, and then Jerry.
Yeah. So I want to touch on something Linda brought up that's really crucial. So she brought up the Lightning Network. So Lightning networks, well, for what a lot of people don't understand, is kind of a way to solve Bitcoin's energy inefficiencies. Ethereum has the same kind of thing going on. It's called plasma. So essentially, the question is, do we need to kind of track every transaction, each one, mine each transaction, or is it okay to confirm, say, 2,000 transactions in a private ecosystem and then validate the balance of those transactions as one transaction on the root chain? So for Lightning, that would be the Bitcoin root chain, and for Ethereum or Plasma, that'd be the Ethereum root chain. So we're looking at different ways. Dragonchain's mastered Plasma, by the way, where their carbon footprint is very low per transaction, like less than a light bulb per transaction. But using combination of different technologies, Plasma is one of them, where it's just pooling transactions, condensing transactions. So there are things in the works, like Ethereum 2.0 is going to proof of stake with child chains running everything streamlining everything. So right now Ethereum's at like 15 to 30 transactions a second, where they're looking at Ethereum 2.0 scaling to over 100,000 transactions per second, which would run the entire earth as it is right now. That's all I got.
You almost need like a clubhouse. Okay, now I'm done. Next. And I'm out. Jerry, go ahead. Thanks.
Thanks,
Jeff.
Andy. So the question I had, and what, first of all, what a great presentation. I really appreciated it. But the question I have is about, are there any conversations about what types of data should be in any given chain, or if a particular enterprise, whether it's if we talk about seed to sale, that's obviously regulated, but are we talking about putting unregulated data into a chain as well, or are we going to use standard operation technologies and IT technologies for that type of data?
I can take that. So there's there's a few different kind of ways around it. You can set up different kind of security protocols. So you can have like certain files where there's different read permissions and write permissions. So certain people in a permissioned environment are allowed to access it based on their credentials and their private key access or public key access. And other people aren't, or say one person's able to read a document, another person's able to read and write on a document. So there's this, you can kind of sort it out and work it from that Genesis block forward, like plan it ahead of time, do all your smart contract programming ahead of time, and just plan ahead for all of that stuff.
Awesome. Did that answer a question, Jerry? You good?
Yeah, I think it did. Yeah, we're good.
Perfect. Bruce, go ahead. I saw your hand is up.
Yeah, thank you, Mandi. I'm really glad to see that we've got this blockchain thing going, because I'm really trying to get my head wrapped around it. And my question has to do with the carbon sequestration again. And I'm not sure if I know how to articulate this exactly right, but say a farmer grows an acre of hemp for fiber and hurd, and in the process adds a half a ton of carbon equivalent to the soil, right? And that's worth X amount of dollars. But now that farmer has a bunch of hurd from that acre, but that hurd actually is worth more. It could be like 4 to, or maybe up to 10 times as much carbon equivalent. When the farmer sells that hurd, because that's just CO2 that's been pulled out of the atmosphere, it has to go somewhere. Now, that hurd could go to animal bedding, right? But that animal bedding is going to eventually just going to decompose. Or it could go to somebody who's going to build a hempcrete house, and that house could last for over 100 years, so it's truly sequestered. And it's to the tune of 5 times or 10 times more than the soil was sequestering CO2. So how does blockchain pay the farmer for his half a ton or 1 ton, and how does blockchain pay the guy who makes the hempcrete house 5 or 10 times more because he's actually sequestered the CO2? And then the same sort of thing, ask the same sort of question. Say somebody, Levi Strauss, makes some jeans that only last 10 years. How do they get the credit for sequestering it for a shorter period of time? Does blockchain address this sort of thing? And if so, how?
All right, I think I can kind of tackle that. So it all comes down to LCAs. So that's like life cycle analysis, life cycle analysts. So it comes down to math. Like we got to track everything all the way. So say you build a hempcrete house, you set a carbon credit for it and set it up. Essentially, over time, as that carbon continues, and you continue to prove that carbon is sequestered in your house, but then say one day it burns to the ground. So then that carbon credit gets burned once the house burns to the ground. So it's all about the kind of like that NFT idea where it's a non-fungible token where it's attaching ownership to something and exchanging the ownership. So essentially it's like the ownership gets transferred from the soil all the way along the line. And then whoever's the ending person on it kind of is like responsible for it. I don't know if that completely answers that question, but again, this is another thing where we're gonna have to get a lot of minds working together to solve this, because this isn't the solution for blockchain and carbon tracking. This is a proposal that we should look at blockchain for tracking carbon.
Thanks, Jeff.
And anybody?
And blockchain is
interested,
not going to fix anything. Yeah, I just want to say blockchain cannot pay people. Blockchain as a thing can be a useful tool, but you have to have the policies in place. You have to have the designation for what the value of a carbon credit is and where that value is being extracted, right? So in a supply chain, you have multiple points where value can be added or extracted, and nobody wants to give up their piece, right? Nobody wants to be having, the pull out of where they feel their value is. So in my opinion, it's going to need to be something that has policy attached to it and is mandated, or else you're not going to get appropriate buy-in. If we have a true circular economy, we don't really need, okay, go ahead. I'm very curious, John, what you want to say.
So this is interesting because I think that there's two approaches that can be used in tandem, right? One is as you say, you have to get buy-in, you have to build consensus, you have to get regulations and all this stuff. And yes, I see. That's the conclusion that everybody comes to, and that's great. The other alternative is if that doesn't happen, the technology sort of that we talked about before that I showed you is a possibility, because it's just like Bitcoin itself, just like the Bitcoin transaction can't be reversed. A cryptocurrency transaction that has all sorts of data can't be reversed either. So you can't stop people from having addresses. You can't stop people from creating a self-sovereign identity system that doesn't have any sort of credentialing outside of themselves. You can't, it would be much nicer if everybody could kind of come together and figure things out. But if that doesn't happen, then there is the possibility of plan B, which is basically people can extend the idea of Bitcoin to data, right? So it's not just about money; it's about data, and it's completely free and open. So
that once again, though, that's people choosing to work together on solving for the problem, right? So it has to be a collaborative effort regardless, and you have to believe. It's like the US dollar, it's the full faith and trust, right? You have to have, and I believe Bitcoin is building that, and blockchain as a technology is building that. It's just a matter of where does that value transfer occur and who's validating it, right? So it's going to be interesting to see how it all pans out.
I think there were good points brought up, and I'd love to dive into it more further. But, when you look at the transfer, like Bruce said, where you grow a crop and a part of it goes to textiles and part of it goes to, house, and the other part goes to biocomposites, and each of those have a different value. And from each of that place, where along that line is it tracked and the values is, assigned. And I think those are the pieces that I would love to dive into more. I know we do a lot on our carbon call. I don't know if you guys saw Brett had to sign off, and so he's gone, but I want to get to these few other questions before everybody else has to leave. I do want to be respectful of time for Linda and Jeff and Trent. Let's see, everybody else, who else is on? Trey, where'd you go? Did he leave too? Have to leave? Bobby, I saw you have a question.
Yes, I'm just curious actually, because I have been, kind of focused on blockchain. In our system, we actually have an active blockchain that runs completely through the system. And because of that, in our decortication process, we directly transform the fiber into finished products in our integrated production solution. So my question to Linda would be, given the fact that we create the fiber and we create the finished product, would that give us, say, an easier route to be able to claim the benefits of that product which we've created?
The more tightly knit the supply chain is, the more easily validated the right to that credit. But once again, I mean, we have the earth that kind of talks back at us, right? When we make poor choices with pollution and different things. Who's designating what those credits should be and how they're allocated? I think the tighter your supply chain, the more obvious it will be where the value should be given. But the question still remains, where is the value extracted to be given? And so I think that's part of, if it comes as a tax credit and the government is deciding to mitigate your tax burden because of what you're doing, that's a value add to the ecosystem. That's, in my opinion, it just hasn't been structured well enough yet from a policy standpoint to have it be really clear. But yes, the tighter you are to the production, yeah.
I understand.
I think you're in a good place
yeah,
when that gets.
Yeah, and whether it's a a tax benefit or it's a direct payment, from a business perspective, it translates into the same thing. It's reduction in cost. So, I think the whole point is that, as you point out, the ability to provide that traceability directly. And again, because in our case, we are focused on products which are highly effective for sequestration because they're used for long-term applications. But I was curious if, in fact, that made it that much easier to get the benefits. Thank you very much, Linda.
I believe it will over time. Yep.
Awesome. Jeff, do you have anything else? Trent, anything else you would like to add as well?
I'm good, thank you.
Jeff?
I just want to thank everybody for showing up. And I've had kind of individual conversations with many of the people on this call. Actually, that's probably hundreds of people over the last few months. And it's kind of cool just getting, bouncing my ideas off of people. And I've learned from every single conversation I've had, every single one of you I've talked to, I've learned something from. And it's just kind of cool to see the feedback where people are kind of like, yeah, you're doing the right thing. You're on the right track, kind of pushing me forward in this, where it's like, it's a lot. It's a lot to take in. It's a lot to learn every day. It's a lot to, the networking is pretty exhausting. So it's like, you guys have kind of been giving me the motivation to keep pushing this forward. So thank you, everybody.
Well, and with that, Jeff, so I have another blockchain meeting scheduled on September 9th. It will be with the same link. Right now, our links are reoccurring. And so we can't update September 9th's speakers and information about what we're talking about until the previous meeting is over. And so just know that same link is a reoccurring link for all of our Thursday meetings, right? And so blockchain, we do have another reoccurring meeting, and then we'll move it to a monthly meeting. I encourage you guys very much to connect off of this or after this. Jeff, did you share your contact information in the chat so people can reach up to?
No, but Brett did. So thank you, Brett, for that.
Perfect. Perfect. And anybody else, share your contact information. Be sure to connect. If you guys need help connecting with each other, I'm happy to help facilitate that. If you see people on the calls and you're like, hey, I really want to reach out to them, I'm happy to help you. That's the focus of this, is to really build a platform where you guys can connect and move this forward. Jeff, do you have anything else, a shout out or anything that you'd like to add to help move your project forward? And what are you looking for as far as the meetings go moving forward? What's the structure?
So essentially, we're looking at just some nonprofit research projects through the Global Hemp Association. Like, we need some verified data. We're 80 years behind everyone else in terms of verified kind of funded research. So we need to put our money where our mouth is and get some verified data. Instead of making claims about carbon, let's actually prove it. So I'm looking at doing some kind of research projects, like the textiles industry would want to do a research project, the processing facilities, the cultivation side of it. I know Bruce and Drawdown Hemp are working on a really big kind of global project on changing the world using hemp. So anybody interested in Drawdown Hemp, definitely check that out. So we just want to do some real research projects, involve as many scientists as possible. I know there's a few people on this call that have kind of said, hell yes, I'm in on the projects on the scientific side. Just even if you just want to be as a simple advisor, any way you can contribute. I'm not asking for tons of time from people, just any way you can contribute. If you know somebody that might know something about any of this stuff, drop them in my email. So my email now, jeff@globalhempassociation.org. I'll type that in the chat. Just if anyone's interested in any part of this, just reach out to me and I will send you some documentation.
Okay, so I just shared the link for our R&D meeting on August 11th. That's also a reoccurring meeting that will continue to come up. I want to speak to, this is where this platform, this software platform that we're launching becomes really powerful, because we can create channels and groups and conversations amongst you guys. And then it opens up networks, right? As we're bringing in other groups and other existing associations, we're also bringing in that data, the research, the knowledge, the tools. And so Jeff is dead on that. Anybody else that would like to get involved, please reach out. Again, we are doing a membership push for our software, for our travel. There's a lot of opportunities that have come up where I've started to co-host some existing podcasts in the construction and building materials space to help drive traffic. There is an existing event in the components and construction and building materials space that we've been asked to come to and create a panel on why hemp and why should these outside existing organizations be paying attention. And so if you guys would like to get involved in those as well, yeah, either email Jeff or myself, and we'll definitely help to facilitate a lot of those opportunities. So please, I would love to have you join. Sean, thank you very much for being on again. I always love having you here. Thank you, Tracy. And anybody else, don't hesitate to reach out. I'm always here to help you. We have a great team. We cannot do this. And when I say we, I have a team of people behind me that help support us. We cannot do this without membership and without you guys' involvement. So thank you very, very, very much for all of you that have joined and support us.
Takes a village.
Yes.
Great job today.
Absolutely. We're going to change the world. Bruce, I don't know if you're still on. I would love to hear from you real quick while people are logging off, but I would love to give a quick intro to the carbon and the Drawdown project you're working on. Anybody else that might be interested, especially in the blockchain space?
Sure. Yeah. The Drawdown hemp thing is growing pretty quickly. We've got like over 20 members now, and it's kind of interesting because we're trying to break into separate groups to do the analysis of various different hemp products and how they can help to not only avoid, but also to sequester CO2. And the theory is that hemp has the potential, we don't know 100% yet, but has the potential to reduce CO2 to the tune of gigatons per year when fully scaled on a massive way. And so XPRIZE, Elon Musk, they have that contest. And that's not the only reason why we're doing this, by the way, but it's a good motivation, but they are looking to give away some money to entities that can figure out how to draw down a lot of CO2 out of the atmosphere. So we're just trying to figure this out, working with Jeff and about 6 other folks now on biochar aspects, but we've got folks looking into biocomposites with Bobby and Mandi. You've been a tremendous help with connecting us with other people. You always are. You're amazing. And we've got probably about 12 to 15 different types of products. Anywhere from a meat analog, right? A meat replacement to feedstock for animals, etc. How do these things impact, the world when it comes to avoiding or sequestering CO2? Obviously, there's hempcrete, there's hemp blocks, there's hemp lumber, hemp wood, but it's really cool. It's coming along really nice. So anybody interested in it, you can check it out. Check us out at drawdownhemp.org.
Okay, I'll share that. Oh, just kidding. I only shared it to Samantha. I'll share it with everybody. Tricky. Anything else? Anything else anybody would like to add? I have a little while that I can stay on if you would like. Other than that, again, I really, really appreciate you, John. I appreciate you joining as well today. Thank you.
Yeah, I guess the only thing I'd like to add is I do come from a strong blockchain background. I do a lot, I do a lot of early stage development, but this call is really cool. This call is, I've been interested in hemp for a long time. And when I hear you guys talk, I actually have this project that I've been doing for a long time. And my swimming pool, I have a diving pool, and it hasn't, I know my wife just sighed, it hasn't functioned as a swimming pool in years. It's like a pond right now. And it's really interesting. It's its own ecosystem, and I would love to be able to monetize it as some sort of maybe hemp vertical garden test test thing with IoT devices connected up to whatever blockchain you want, and it's something that I don't think that needless to say, I don't live in an HOA, and it's something that would cost millions of dollars to build out from scratch in some lab with all the specs from the city, but it might just be kind of the perfect thing for this, for this engagement. So just something to think about. So feel free to message me.
We may have to hit you up for a little test lab.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And my wife did totally sigh when I said that. So
well, and it's going to take all different types of projects, right? And all different pieces together and opportunities. One thing that we are doing as an association is actively working on relationships and building partnerships with different universities across the world. And so just know that is definitely somewhere. So if you have a good relationship or are part of a university and would like to get involved with these, that we are actively seeking that piece as well. So there are all different verticals.
Yeah. So I did send a few years ago, I sent water samples off to one of the agricultural colleges here, the Aggies, and I guess that would be Texas A&M. And they did tests and they sent it back, but that would be I think a great it could be almost like an ancillary thing or whatever. So I think there's a lot of potential there. That's who I would be interested in working with.
Cool. Okay, well, I invite you guys to come to the R&D meeting for sure on the 11th. Other than that, we'll see you later. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, I can't wait for you to be members. Please join. We need your support to keep doing this and to grow this. We've got lots of opportunities coming up. Okay, thank you guys.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.